Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects. Row Home Productions.
More fire.
Hey, you're dealing with the rebels, of course.
Yeah.
Over to the boss.
Somos el pueblo tomando la calle. Ice disappears when it's melted by fire. Somos trabajadores, los criminales son los gobernadores y los senadores y el presidente. Yeah, that's the real Agent Orange. More fire to the streets. El pueblo unido, no justice, no peace.
And if you hear the song, take back the land. Go take the streets, baby, take back the land. Will the people please
unruly,
put up
unruly.
your hands? Now is the time
Unruly,
to take back
unruly.
the land.
Palestina.
Take
What's
back
up,
the
y'all?
land.
Unruly Subjects is outside. Yes, we are. You already know that. Yo, that was, woo, was that hot? Yo, that's Take Back the Land. That music right there from Rebel Diaz, RodrigoStarz, and RoqueStarz. You know what I'm saying? Y'all might remember we had RodrigoStarz from Rebel Diaz join the show and broke down how, Rebel Diaz, weaves together hip hop and organizing. And we got an exclusive preview that they're going to be dropping a new project featuring his son, RoqueStarz. I got a chance to see his son perform live, and it was like, oh my God, it's amazing. His son is, young, you know what I'm saying? We're going to have a little treat related to that toward the end of the episode, so you definitely want to stay tuned. But this week, speaking of taking back the land, we are going into data centers again. You know what I'm saying? Right, y'all. We had an episode a couple of weeks ago, How to Kill a Data Center. And, we're going to build on that. We got really, really great guests, Astra Taylor and Saul Levin, who has a new podcast all about this topic called The Hum. So I can't wait to get into it. But before we do, just want to take care of a couple of things. First, shout out to our Patreon supporters. You know what I'm saying? We really appreciate y'all. You know what I mean? More and more people are coming on board in the community. We're getting some more feedback, and man, we're going to start doing more and more there. We are a free show, you know what I'm saying? Like we make this show ourselves, you know what I'm saying? And we're independent. We want to keep it that way, and you are helping us to do that. So we really appreciate your support. And if you are not already a part of our Patreon community, come on through unrulysubjectspodcast.com. You can, join at various tiers and, just become involved, and we really appreciate that. But before we get into the main conversation this week, I want to talk about what's going on over in Delaney Hall. This is a massive ICE detention center in Newark, New Jersey. And over the last few days, y'all might have seen that this has really become a flashpoint in the fight against ICE detention and deportation. I mean, things really escalated over this past weekend. And what we saw happening this weekend came out of a longer fight over private detention. Delaney Hall is operated by Geo Group, one of the major private prison and detention companies in the country. And from the beginning, folks were fighting this. So Newark Mayor Ras Baraka challenged the facility over legal permits and threatened to shut it down. That clash turned into a legal fight. I mean, the mayor was arrested when he tried to go accompanying members of Congress on an oversight visit. Things have continued to build after that. About a year ago in June 2025, the detainees in the center started to protest, food shortages and atrocious living conditions, which of course we're seeing across the country. There's also been deaths in December of 2025. A Haitian man named Jean Wilson Brutus died one day after arriving there. But, the detainees and the community have not been taking this. They've been organizing inside the facility and around it. And so for months, they've been putting out letters, right, written by the detainees who are really giving accounts of not only the conditions under which they were detained in these letters, but they also are talking about what this is costing them in terms of the trauma, the psychological torture, the conditions, all of it. And then this past Friday, they escalated with a hunger strike. So this started at 4 a.m. And, my understanding is, hundreds of detainees are participating in this. And one of the voices at the center of this is a man named Martin Soto. He was kind of like leading the announcement of the hunger strike. And his wife, Gabriela Soto, has really been leading the organizing and rallying people outside and calling for not just for her husband, for everybody to be free. She's a U.S. citizen. She's several months pregnant, and she's been staying outside Delaney Hall as part of the protests, right? And so on Friday, this hunger strike started. More people started coming to Delaney Hall out in front. By the way, I do want to say that there are people who have been supporting the folks inside Delaney Hall for a while. My wife has gone with some people that recruited her to go in there and just talk to the families and support those families in different ways. So, it's like now Delaney Hall is like right in the center of the news, and it's been at these moments. But even in between, I just got to shout out the work of those organizers who have been supporting these families and paying attention to what's going on, even when it's not right in the news. So on Sunday, everything ramped up. Gabriela was waiting to visit her husband when she saw someone being forced into a van, and she thought maybe this is him, but whoever it is, they didn't want ICE to just be moving people, especially people who they're moving them because they're leaders of this protest. So some other visitors told her that this was her husband who was being moved, and she went toward the van and started banging on it, and the protesters joined her, and they actually formed a blockade at the gates trying to stop, them from moving this person out of the facility. And so they were all chanting like, free them all. And you could even see the detainees inside banging on the windows in rhythm with the chants outside. So on Monday, May 25th, things escalated even further. Federal agents responded with pepper spray and firing pepper balls. Governor Cheryl said she was denied access to tour the facility that day. And Senator Andy Kim said he was pepper sprayed while outside supporting detainees on the hunger strike. He and Representative Rob Menendez went in and confirmed the inhumane treatment, right? Poor food and water that tasted disgusting. They also said that they saw several 18-year-old girls who would have been graduating high school if they weren't arrested in this facility. So I also stopped by Delaney Hall myself, but I was unable to stay very long. I got there after these confrontations happened, but I saw folks out there holding the line, trying to support the families, figuring out what the next step is. And, I kind of wanted to think about what's going on here and how do our larger organizations, including labor, need to show up in this fight, man, because what's happening in there is absolutely unreasonable. One of the letters that the detainees wrote is circulating. It's called El Grito de Nosotros, or Our Cry, a letter from inside Delaney Hall. The version I have says it was written by Leonardo Villalba. So I want to read a little bit of this letter, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes you can hear me read the whole thing, but you also have the letter itself, so you can just read it and read the other letters. Here it is. We feel vulnerable, in a way, kidnapped or detained without justification. We see with profound helplessness and frustration that the right to due process and legal counsel were violated, and benefits granted in the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution were unacknowledged. In addition, families are being destroyed and separated, especially where there are minor children and nephews who are suffering a very strong psychological impact because they do not understand the situation. And in some cases, they were subjected to witness the arrests of their wives and fathers who were devastated by the tragedy and the economic burden, since we are the providers and heads of our households. Additionally, the ICE agents have arrested people with mental health issues, physical disabilities such as deaf and nonverbal, elderly individuals, and young people with juvenile status, with whom we have to live in the detention centers that are overcrowded. The flu is a constant problem among the detainees, as are stress, fever, and general body aches, which could lead to an outbreak of illness or an epidemic. In addition to what was previously mentioned in my court hearing with the motion to send me to Ecuador, I did not have an interpreter in my language. I, Leonardo Villalba, take responsibility for this statement, as I do not want my fellow detainees to suffer any consequences. Our American dream is safety and protection with our families. Although this is a difficult situation, we trust in God and believe in American justice. On the following pages are the signatures of the detainees who will corroborate what has been stated. So listen, folks, if you're in New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia, or anywhere close enough to pay attention, stay tuned to this. I know we got a lot on our plates, but definitely I want y'all to follow what's going on and support it. There's all kinds of rapid response calls, but it's really important to contact the elected officials, even though it seems like they're not letting them in. But we got to demand that this stops. And I just want us all to kind of tune into it. And I would say it's important because, to support people at these facilities, even when the struggle is not like at this pitch, it's still important to pay attention. In some ways, what we know about what's going on is because there were folks who were already working there. All right. This week, we're going to return to our conversation about data centers. Y'all know we already had the episode, How to Kill a Data Center. We appreciate y'all sharing that because that one definitely got out there. That was about a proposed data center in Monterey Park. But that issue continues to grow, continues to make headlines. I just saw a headline that the storied climate activist Erin Brockovich has now launched a public data center map and reporting tool. She's asking people to document community concerns around water, electricity, health, wildlife, all those things, noise. So it just goes to show you that this fight is really catching on. And so I wanted to really find folks who could help us understand the scale of this and who are also really asking some of the smartest questions about this. And then I see this article in The Guardian by Saul Levin and my friend Astra Taylor. And so Saul is, a sort of environmental activist, a policy person. He's also the host of a new podcast called The Hum, which is all about this. It's out right now. You can hear it. And it's following data center fights across the country. And then Astra Taylor is a writer, organizer, filmmaker, and one of the sharpest people thinking about democracy, debt, technology, and power. And so they wrote this great article for The Guardian, and I wanted to bring them on to really deepen our understanding of this issue. I can't wait for y'all to hear it. Here it is. Unruly subjects. Yes. We are here once again. You know what I mean? Look, y'all, a while back, we had an episode called How to Kill a Data Center. It is one of our most popular episodes. Apparently, a lot of y'all wanted to know that. You know what I mean? Y'all wanted to stick the pitchfork straight into the data center. And every time someone gives me an account of how this movement is growing, how many of these projects have been stopped, I'm always startled. There's always more than I thought and different kinds of folks than I thought. So we have today for you, I'm just going to say, that they're going to deny this, but I'm going to say, we got the smartest people on the stop. See, smarter than me, they know more than you about this shit, and it's what it is. You know what I mean? They're not the bad kind of smart people. They're the kind, compassionate folks. We have Saul Levin is a community organizer, host of The Hum, a new podcast, which we're going to be talking about that is specifically about this. Saul is a policy person who knows lots of these things, but got pulled into the struggle, and you're going to hear how. So welcome, Saul Levin. First of all, welcome, Saul.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And also we have with us Astra Taylor, who's a writer, organizer, documentary filmmaker, co-founder of Debt Collective, philosopher, all kinds of things. So welcome, Astra.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Good. I gotta say, Astra and Naomi Klein, got the book coming to us soon, End Times Fascism. It was hard. It's hard to let your comrades go so they can write. So this fight, the scale of it is huge. And I guess, could we start out maybe by having you, Saul, talk about how you got tuned into this? Because you seem like you got tuned into it earlier than other people.
10 years ago, I was working on a renewable energy and energy efficiency project in Michigan that turned out to be a data center. And I didn't know that the cloud and whatever other words we use for the internet was housed in a building in the center of my home state. But there it was, consuming a huge amount of energy. And so I've kind of had my eye on data centers because I was like, where are the rest of them? With no concept that this was going to be an explosive issue. But 2 or so years ago, I heard about the political leadership in the Democratic and Republicans parties in my home state of Michigan conspiring to give away incalculable amounts of water and tax benefits to AI companies and AI data centers relocating or building in Michigan.
Wow.
And I was horrified. And that's what initially pulled me into the fight.
So since that time, you've come in contact with a lot of people who are organizing across the country. Could you talk a little bit about how you got in contact with those folks and how you got involved with your particular set of organizing skills?
Yes, I've been an organizer in the environmental movement for a long time and in the labor movement, but honestly, it was about calling people. I started calling people back home in Michigan and saying, what's going on with this water? And everything I would read was making me more concerned. And people I would talk to would say, you have no idea. There's been like 2 or 3 stories about this happening in the press in Michigan. And there are dozens of projects that are hidden behind NDAs. And so I basically got a head start because we were worried about, Michigan, about the Great Lakes state, and then started getting in touch with people. Today, myself and folks I organize closely with are in touch with people fighting AI data centers in more than 45 states. And it's basically all over the country. And actually, we're in touch with folks fighting AI data centers in the European Union, in Africa, in South America. So it's really becoming a global problem. And we're in touch with folks. And I started a small chat of folks working on this that now has over 300 people across 40 states. And so it's just exploded. And we're trying to, see what we can do about it.
Wow. It absolutely is. International is important to set up, 45 states. I just think, it makes sense because what I see, once you start searching this stuff, the algorithm is starting to throw up a lot of these fights, but it still is not on that scale. I think people don't understand. So Astra, when did you feel like you really kind of were paying attention to this and realizing like, oh shit, something different is happening from a movement standpoint?
Yeah, and just to put my cards on the table, like I'm approaching this right now as a writer and thinking about the state of our politics. And fundamentally, I'm someone who's really interested in power and who has it and who doesn't and how they wield it. And so that means that I've been interested in the internet for a while. And so I wrote a book called The People's Platform, came out in 2014. Back in the day when we thought social media was going to democratize everything, that was the storyline, right? And I kind of brought a sensibility. There was also a time when I was deeply involved in Occupy Wall Street, and so I think I brought this kind of Occupy sensibility to my analysis of social media and the internet, and basically was like, we need to pay more attention to the business models underlying this tech than just the hypothetical technological abilities. Like, sure, you can have, a digital town square, but that means it has to be run in the public interest. It can't be actually privatized and undergirded by advertising and data mining and surveillance. And at the time, I kind of pulled my punches because there was so much enthusiasm in the culture. People were just so hyped on it. And Google was in its, don't be evil phase. And Facebook was going to connect us to all of our friends. So I kind of pulled my punches. It's a pretty critical book. But
Very critical, but I want to slow dig in for just I want to ask. So, because I read that book and saw it as critical, was your sense of that you pulled the punches, was that just because you were like, people can't handle dropping the full guillotine, or was it that you too was not sure about what might be possible?
No, I thought people couldn't handle the dropping of the full guillotine. And also, it's funny, the guillotine's been on my mind because people are always like, but technology is neutral. My friend the other day said something brilliant. He said, a guillotine could, in theory, be used to chop very large carrots, but that's not what it was made for, right? Technology has affordances, as people say, and the way social media was designed in this economic system, it wasn't neutral, right? And I was trying to call that out. And I was also looking at the tech executives. It was on the record back then that Peter Thiel was an outrageous woman-hating libertarian, and that there were these very toxic right-wing ideologies deeply enmeshed in the fabric of Silicon Valley. So a lot of stuff was there, and it felt like the general cultural conversation, it just had to go in with a bit more hedging and in order to be taken seriously, right? And so we're kind of seeing the same movie again. And this time I'm like, we're not pulling punches, right? The culture was very critical of big tech already before the data center AI boom. And for good reason, right? Because we saw that this sort of democratizing promise did not manifest. And so, the culture is just in a radically different place. People have been very critical of Silicon Valley going back almost a decade now. I think it's just sort of a natural evolution for me to be like interested in what's happening with these data centers. And also, so to come at it from that sort of interest and power perspective as an abstract thing, how is this changing society? How is this changing politics? But also, as an organizer, there is something so powerful happening on the ground at these sites, because these data centers are the backbone of the AI revolution that is being shoved down our throats. And it's bringing together all kinds of people. And that is something that's pretty incredible. There's a lot of potential there. And that's why Saul and I wrote that piece for The Guardian to say, this is kind of a once in a lifetime moment in terms of the potential movement that could be built around this issue. Because all that hype is gone, all that democratizing hype, all that, the utopian claims some of the AI executives make, nobody believes them. The public sentiment is just in a very different place than it was.
It's very different, and they know it. And we're gonna definitely dig into what they know and how they're feeling. But by the way, the article that Astrid just referred to is called "The Fight Against AI Data Centers Isn't Just About Tech; It's About Democracy." And Astra and Saul wrote this article for The Guardian. It's great. It's one of the smartest things you can read about this, because what it does is it really, I think, puts this whole fight into a larger movement context, as well as engaging with some of the arguments that might be attractive to smart people who share some of our values. One of the things that, Saul told me was like, he had been, in these fights engaging with the people in these fights, like you said, 30, 40 states, all talking to all these people. And one of the things I'm going to ask you was like, where are some of the smartest conversations you see happening in those fights? Like we see there's some clear patterns about the kind of things that bring people in. We've seen the things about electricity and water bowl to the surface and become like big national conversations. And unreleased subjects, listen, there's a new podcast that y'all gotta listen to that is out now. The first is, how many episodes is out, Saul?
1 episode and 1 trailer. That's all we got so far.
It's called The Hum, y'all. Y'all know I don't recommend nothing that ain't fire. So you need to go listen to it. And I this one is actually, I think, an exclusive, because I think the conversation we're gonna play a snippet of, that's not even out yet. You know what I mean? But that's how I do. I'm like, this is, so, it's like I'm socialist and also transactional. You want to come on my show, you got to give me an exclusive.
Whatever you need.
But anyway, could you set up the clip that you're going to play of Ash? Because I thought it was a really rich and instructive conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this conversation with Ash is a classic conversation that represents what we're doing on The Hum, which is talking to people who are fighting AI and data centers and digging into their own context and story and why they're fighting, how they're fighting, and what's coming up. And Ash is based in Oklahoma, but was organizing on Seminole territory. And Ash and other indigenous organizers were fighting for a moratorium on data center projects on Seminole land. And it's a remarkable story because they ended up passing a permanent ban on data centers and artificial general intelligence infrastructure. And this is a little clip about their fight, why they were doing it, and how the AI issues and data center issues were connected in the way that they were appropriating and stealing land, language, and culture at once. Could you say a little bit more about the data sovereignty and what folks on Seminole and other tribal folks you're working with at Honor the Earth would like to see? What would be a more appropriate way to think about data storage and move away from this theft and consolidation for a few people kind of model?
Yeah, so we definitely recognize, and this has been like a sticky issue about the needs for the different tribes to have a place to store their data. But what we're arguing is that it doesn't need to be these hyperscale data centers that are owned, like you said, by these multinational techno-feudal technocrats who are exploiting the data that's being mined and being stored and being sold, and really right sizing down. Really is one of the things that we're encouraging tribes right now. And Cherokee Nation is a good example of this because they are a huge tribe. They do have huge data needs, and they do care about their data sovereignty. Is to really take an assessment of what are your actual technology needs. I think that what we're seeing is that these developers are coming and like dangling these, fake carrots in front of our tribal leaders. And we are, pitted against the real life need of being able to economically care for our tribal citizens. But then at the same time, like at what cost and what is the actual risk involved with that. And so for me, what we would like to see at Honor the Earth around data sovereignty is that belongs to that tribal nation and that tribal nation alone. We think that, sovereignty is the right for the tribe, the inherent right for a tribal nation to, decide what's best and decide what they want and what they don't want for their tribal community. I think we do go a little bit further, though, to say that like it shouldn't just be the tribal leadership who makes that decision, that tribal sovereignty really depends on the whole community, because that is, what makes a nation. And so it's really important, too, that the community also has a say in how this data is being stored, where it's going to and what it's being used for. And over again, we're just seeing that elders, they don't want this information being used in this way. What they're wanting is for the youth and for the community to come to them. And so one of the things that we say at Honor the Earth is ask your auntie, not AI. And that really is just, encouraging our communities to return to our traditional ways, our oral stories, our learning how to, make our food with an auntie, going back and learning those stories from the people who hold that information in the community. And so we think it's really important for people to understand that, our nations and our elders, our knowledge holders, our spiritual leaders, our culture bearers, those are the people that have this information, and generative AI is not going to ever replace that. And I think that's one thing that makes Indigenous communities unique, and another reason why it's so important for us to fight against, this technology.
Wow. There's so much I think about when I heard that, but yeah, Astra, I'm curious what comes up for you when you hear this.
Yeah, there's so much in that clip. I mean, I think she hints at a one underappreciated aspect of this technology, which is the potential for a kind of authoritarian control of knowledge. I mean, it's quite striking that Trump called his social media platform Truth Social, and that Elon Musk, wasn't he thinking about calling Grok Truth GPT? He's also got his Grokopedia as like alternative Wikipedia. And there is this desire to control what people encounter. And that is, they do it under the rubric of not woke AI, right? Like that's the biggest existential threat to humanity, according to Elon Musk, who's one of the leading accelerators of this technology.
Truth is pitted against their idea of woke, right?
Truth versus woke, and but it's this idea that their incredibly biased bots can pass as truth, and I think that's one part of the anti-democratic appeal of this technology to these authoritarians. I mean, it also gets at what is the model being trained on? I mean, so much indigenous knowledge is not included in the data sets that the AI is being trained on, right? So what's in there, what's represented, even in the material, what biases are kind of baked into the technology. The questions of governance are really fascinating. Who gets to have a say in how this technology is developed and deployed? And what counts ultimately as knowledge and as wisdom? Is it the human being, your auntie, or is it this corporate technology that most of us have no say over?
100%. Saul, what for you stands out revisiting this clip?
It was a remarkable conversation, and one of the things that stood out is the way that AI has been jammed down all of our throats and into everything that we use. I actually also interviewed the tribal councilman Traban a wonderful person who introduced that resolution on Seminole territory. And he said something that I don't think I'll ever forget. He said, Saul, it isn't just about us not wanting these corporate-owned data centers on our territory. It's actually that we meet on the tribal council to do things to better our community. And this is a waste of time because we're trying to make sure that everyone's housed and everyone's fed. We're trying to make sure that the kids are taken care of and that they're able to learn. And it's not just that this is bad. It's like we are not accepting the framing that this is the pressing thing for us to talking about, like data center or not data center. He was like, this is not a good use of my time. I'm busy. I was like, that is an argument I hadn't really heard before in hundreds of conversations. So I think that's striking. And the other thing I want to say quickly to the power dynamic that Astra alluded to is that when we talk about large language models, we're talking about something that's controlled by the people making the models, and they stand to benefit. But the large language comes from billions of people's labor over generations and generations. And so the concentration of wealth and the theft of data and labor that actually goes into creating and circulating language is unlike any concentration and theft in history because it's being stolen from every generation that's captured online rather than just the present generation's labor. And so that's why the concentration of wealth that these billionaires are taking on is so troubling and scary. But it's also why so many people with wildly different backgrounds and perspectives can come together on AI and data centers because we all share a love of language and human creativity that's being stolen and concentrated in the hands of 7 angry guys in Silicon Valley.
No, 100%. And because the way that these technologies and these people, because it's not that the technologies, people are making the technologies do the things that they're doing, are pulling in all this language and, the thing that they're calling these sort of calculations, which are being told are the same as thinking. That's kind of abstract, I think, for people to wrap their head around that theft. But when you think about, like, for example, art, and you can think about it when you're like, wait a minute, you just took my art, you're training this thing on it, you're making all this dough, you're putting out trash, terrible art, by the way. It really should, I think, make us curious, and I hope it does too. And I think that's why everyone should sort of go listen to the hum, is if you think you know this story, you don't until you really attend to the particular, as some certain folks might say, right? It's like it does matter, right, to see how this is expressing itself in different contexts. I mean, even what we did in Monterey, the way, the kinds of things, and I remember the Monterey organizers talked about how important translating the sort of materials about the proposed data center into different languages was in that particular context. Like, that was key. And then to really spend time talking to people to hear for a minute what the stakes were going to be. For them, it wasn't necessarily water and electricity. It was also like the land value, One thing that I got to when I went down the rabbit hole after reading your article was that, so apparently some of these data centers they'll propose the data center, and then they'll propose it, like, let's say, to the municipal government. And then they'll say, we're going to make so much money that you should give us a tax abatement for this. And then that kind of happens. So, like, even before people have consented, sometimes the tax abatements are already legislated so that you've actually already stolen taxpayers' money for the data center before you even, and people are just maybe even just learning that this is going to happen. Like, I'm like, wow, what about that part? Is my understanding of that right, that that's how it's played out in certain places?
Yeah, totally. The way that it's played out is hard to track because this is happening so fast. I mean, these companies are building a hyperscale data center in 100 days. That's the size of a large American city, right? And so one of the ways that it has played out is that tax abatements and tax breaks and tax incentives and all kinds of different tax structures go to these companies, and then Democratic and Republican governors go out on stage and talk about how they're so innovative. And I can't imagine why someone would think it would be innovative to give away money you don't have and it's not yours. But that is the way that they're talking about it. And to the specific point that you made, what's happening is that everything's happening behind closed doors. Companies are actually getting city councilors to sign NDAs and making agreements that's like, we are going to bring so much money here, and then you guys are going to not charge us taxes because there's money here. And when you really think about it, who's that a good deal for? Because then the company leaves with their money. They haven't paid into the state and they haven't created jobs. Like, where is the pro side of that pro and con list?
No, 100%. Astra, anything you want to jump in on?
I just want to underscore how much secrecy there is. I mean, often people don't know who the end user is going to be. These projects often have these code names. So it's called Project Blue. That was the name of a data center in Tucson, Arizona, or Project Tulip was one in the Netherlands, or Project Sugar was one in Louisiana. So there's so much that is hidden from people because these companies know that if people knew who was behind them, they would object even more ferociously. But the numbers are really hard to trace, but it does seem like some states are losing, multiple billions in these abatements. And community members are rightly concerned that this could be a bubble and they're going to make this big data center. And then maybe it actually won't be in operation forever. And they'll have this, empty warehouse and this bad tax deal. There's been some research that tries to even calculate how much money per job it's costing local governments, because these companies also come in with these vague promises of jobs. And in reality, we're seeing a hyperscale data center maybe produces 30, 50, 100 jobs, right? So these jobs end up actually costing communities money. So the math is very bad, except for, the tech companies that are coming in and raking in their billions and trillions from this.
And I want to add one thing to that, if it's cool. I just heard about a data center project in the city of Boston that's happening above a Macy's. And so this data center project is actually subsidizing the rent for the Macy's to get them to agree because, of course, huge department stores aren't having the best success these days with everyone shopping online. And the organizers I was talking to about it were like, we're almost certain that the data center that's funding the rent of a Macy's employs the most people of any data center in America because, they're paying the rent for Macy's. And so it's like, wow, we could have a department store, just one, and it would hire more people than the data center. And so like the apparently good scenarios are the ones where, they're doting on top of Macy's.
Oh my God, that's wild.
Well, and the last thing, I'll just say, the secrecy does, serve a purpose because, for example, Project Blue in Tucson, when organizers were able to uncover the fact that it was Amazon that was likely the end user of this data center, it further radicalized the community because then the concerns expanded beyond climate concerns, right? I mean, you're in the desert, it's very dry, there are water shortages, to what Amazon hosts on its web servers, right? And it hosts Palantir technology. So then people were thinking about what that meant for the immigrant community living in Tucson, right? People were also thinking about Amazon's deals with the Israeli military and were able to connect the data center to the genocide in Gaza so that those details, when they're exposed, also expand the coalition and bring in more people to the fight. So there are multiple reasons for the secrecy.
Yes. So, Astra, I think that's a crucial point. And one of the reasons why you all have to go read the Guardian article is because it says that the stakes for our movement building are huge here. The coalitions that are possible when people realize, what kind of data is being produced and housed and extracted. It's like, and what is being used for, both overseas in these wars with immigration. I mean, the coalition building is huge. And that's actually part of the power of this movement. It's also why they have to keep this stuff secret. Really important point. I want to switch to a different part of your argument where you're talking about the fact that it's easy in one sense to beat up on certain parts of the argument that are coming from conservatives and some of these tech folks about data centers. But we should spend a minute visiting those and the fact that they know that these things are unpopular, but also that there are some arguments that might be more attractive. You're seeing some liberal and folks who might imagine themselves even as progressive coming out. And I think you all can really take us through some of these things and what we should be thinking about in a smart way. But let's start out with the panic that these folks are feeling. You all are like, yo, I'm sorry, y'all, but we got to pay attention to what these people are doing. We got to listen to some of their media a little bit. And I every time you all have pointed me in that direction, I'm like, oh, God, do I have to listen to this? And I'm like, oh, shit.
We try to listen so you don't have to. That's our burden.
Well, let's all listen together for a minute. There's a clip here on this podcast called All In, I believe it's called. And it is with
Critically, it is hosted by David Sachs, who until recently was Trump's AI and crypto czar. And he is a longtime colleague of Peter Thiel and a major AI investor, venture capitalist, longtime right-winger from Silicon Valley.
So in this clip, they're kind of sharing what they know about the problem that's coming for them. I mean, is there anything else you want to say about it before we play Astra?
I mean, this is essentially three venture capitalists acknowledging the fact that the technology they are forcing upon society is deeply unpopular, and people are saying no. And so this is evidence, I would say, that the people on top are afraid of the data center and AI resistance movement.
We unfortunately have very poor leadership at the head of most of these AI firms. I think they are coming off as untrustworthy or too self-interested.
Really?
The political reaction now is starting to turn negative. The community reaction is negative. You have about 9 gigawatts that are supposed to come online this year. Almost 50% of it now is being protested. More than likely, if history holds, most of that will get turned off. So they will get even more supply constrained. So that's the setup. So what's the opportunity?
We don't need to hear the opportunity, I think, right now. We know we have a sense of it. But what comes, I mean, okay, so what comes up for y'all hearing them talk about this?
First off, these guys are being critical of tech AI leaders, but they do love Elon Musk. They think he's doing this right. So that shows what paradigm they're in. I mean, I think it shows that this is a leverage point. I mean, he acknowledges that this resistance movement is going to be able to slow down and halt AI rollout. And again, these data centers are the backbone of the artificial intelligence revolution, right? They need this technology to roll out their larger agenda, which is what they aspire to do is to do, in the words of OpenAI, all of economically viable labor, right? Their goal is to build this sort of human labor replacement machine and to be able to get into every domain from the industrial to the intimate. I mean, this is in their ambitions. This is a general purpose technology. It can go everywhere. So it's much bigger than social media in that way, right? It's, chat bots, are used in this very sort of personal way. And we also see the way, a company like Amazon is automating, using AI to automate its warehouses. So that's the kind of scope that they have in mind. And so to do this, they need to build out this massive infrastructure. But in 2025, the data says that almost 50 data centers were blocked, and $150 billion of development was slowed down or blocked entirely because of local community resistance. And so, that puts some real sand in the gears of this machine they're trying to build. And we should take note of the fact that they're taking note of that, because it shows it's a real leverage point.
100% right. And actually, when you look later on in the podcast, when they talk about the kinds of proposals that they have to start to think about taking seriously, you see that it's a leverage point.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, they're like, darn, we should have branded it better. Like, we sort of emphasized all the bad stuff, like it's going to take your job and possibly destroy the world. They're like, damn, maybe we should have thought of some different branding. But then they're also like,
they go back to this Rockefeller example where they're like, what if Rockefeller had called Standard Oil clean oil?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe that's what we need to do.
What if instead of artificial intelligence, we had called it awesome intelligence? I mean, it's just like, right? Like, oh, we just had the wrong language. But then they kind of go right up to like, maybe we should give people some healthcare and stuff and like, some Social Security. But then they all like freak out at the end and decide that would be terrible.
No, thank you.
Right. It's really about the branding in that clip and the way they talk about it generally. They're like, I'm worried these AI CEOs are coming across as inauthentic and reckless and selfish, as opposed to being concerned that they are inauthentic, selfish, and reckless. And so the problem that they're identifying is that regular people know that these guys are assholes and that they're trying to steal all of their data and take over whatever aspects of their lives they please. And it's really funny to me that this is, to them, it's a branding issue. It's like the way that they're talking about marketing is exactly how Astra and I saw this in all of the research and all of the different essays we're reviewing, right? It's like, wow, these folks are talking about the end of civilization as we know it for everyone but them. And they're like, this is a branding issue. That's almost hard to fathom how bizarre and problematic that is, but that's what they're saying.
This episode of Unruly Subjects is brought to you by Haymarket Books, which has loads of great left-wing titles, perfect for listeners like you. And one that I know y'all are going to feel is Unions of Our Own, 8 Building Blocks to Change Work and the World by Daniel Gross. Our workplaces urgently need to get better, but change can feel murky, daunting, or even impossible. We imagine a different world, too, but billionaires are doing their best to make things worse. In Unions of Our Own, veteran labor organizer and co-founder of the IWW Starbucks Workers Union, Daniel Gross, provides a radically new, step-by-step framework for workers who want to dramatically improve their jobs and dream of bigger changes, too. It reveals and puts into your hands the 8 fundamental building blocks to win a union that meets your needs and values. Through proven tools, Gross's personal stories from campaigns, vivid history, and real-world examples, Unions of Our Own offers a practical, accessible, and empowering philosophy on how to design your own union and win. As Mark Bray puts it, if your workplace lacks a union, this is the book to read with your fellow workers. If you are already a union member, read this book to expand your ranks and build more power from the bottom up. Find Unions of Our Own at haymarketbooks.org, where all paperback books are 20% off every day. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects. I have some friends who work at Meta, and it's like really interesting to just hear their accounts of like what the vibe is like. I mean, it's because Meta, they're so brutal in the way they're doing it, even to their own workers. Like they're just like, you have to use AI. I mean, you heard Mark Zuckerberg say this, but what's interesting, it's fascinating, is he doesn't really, like, there was like, it's a leak of Zuckerberg saying, to shareholders or whatever, how they're thinking about AI, as though, but it's like, he also talks to the workers like that. That's just kind of how they are. They don't even try to couch it as anything in their benefit.
No, I mean, what he's saying is AI is going to spy on every click you make on your computer to train the AI to do your job as soon as possible. And they don't lie.
I mean, I don't know. I think that the massive uprising and unpopularity of both these leaders and these data centers are evidence that it's kind of, these arguments aren't resonating with people, and in a way they're kind of easy to push back on. But there are arguments that are harder for people to weed through, or that might seem more appealing, especially for people who really want to think about what the practical solutions are. So what do you think are arguments that are coming from a more left place that we need to think about maybe in a critical way, Astra?
I think there are a lot of people across the political spectrum in the United States who believe that technology is inevitable, and that to be skeptical of technology is Luddite, is naive. And so that, I think that's part of what's undergirding some of the pushback from left and liberal circles on the data center movement, right? It's like, well, this is the future. It's coming whether we like it or not. And so therefore, you shouldn't be too extreme in your resistance to it.
But do you think that, I've heard a lot of people push back on inevitability, and that I think is important to do, because it is absolutely true that, people who are sort of technological utopians. I mean, I don't even want to give these people the credit of calling them utopians, right? It's like, let's not just diss the utopians, but people who are just like, pushing this stuff are like, it's inevitable. But do you think that there's some people are saying it's inevitable because it's here? There's a tremendous amount of venture. What is some like crazy portion of venture capital went into AI? It's in all these things with us already. So that, do you think that some people are saying it's not that it's inevitable, but that this is actually the terrain of struggle right now? Like it's not like the kind of refusal that some people imagine is maybe not like it's so already embedded in so much stuff. Like, how are you gonna, you know what I'm saying? Are you gonna about to throw your phone and computer away? Like, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's kind of connected, right? It's like it's here, and so on some level, we got to get used to it. Maybe we can tweak it around the margins or something like that. I mean, I think there's a sort of good faith argument that's critical of this movement. I think, and that version is like, is it the most strategic thing to block data centers one by one? Aren't you playing kind of whack-a-mole, right? Shouldn't somehow we aim for legislative solutions? I think that, I think Salt and I agree that misunderstands how you actually build movements and build power, and how you get that disruptive force so that you can, make a company like Google or Meta or an adversarial administration come to the table and make some concessions. And I would argue that
people are saying, are you saying people are kind of like, don't fight them one by one, like somehow?
And people always, this is just like, I've been an organizer for a long time, Saul has too. People are always telling you when you're an activist, like, you're doing it wrong. Right. From my armchair, I can see that you should be doing something else. So it feels to me like, and those people aren't always terrible people. It's just like they've maybe never tried to put their theories into practice. But there are other arguments that I think are coming from a different orientation, one that is more pro AI in general, right? That thinks that we should embrace this technology on a much bigger scale, and that there are bigger philosophical disagreements, I think, from where I stand and where these people are coming from. And some of those arguments can be critical in a way that I would say is maybe not bad faith, but just like, I think that they're naive and misguided. So that was, we were responding to a piece in Jacobin magazine by an academic named Holly Jean Buck, who has a history of writing about, geoengineering as something that the left should support, and has a kind of tendency to take on the left flank of the environmental movement, and is now, saying that the data center movement, the anti-data center movement, is a dead end because of all these reasons that ultimately are industry talking points, right? That somehow we will be making the world less equitable if we do not let AI roll out on this massive scale.
So another kind of argument, I think, in the realm around data centers that might be, confusing or interesting for people has to do with, some things that appear to be regulation or, deals that have been struck with some of these tech leaders to essentially say, well, what if they just pay? If you're saying the problem is like electricity, costs are going to go up, what if they pay? Those kinds of things. And, in this regard, there was an interesting piece of messaging that you shared with us, Astra, that came from Congressperson Nancy Mace in South Carolina. And I'll just pull it up, but we'll read it for our listeners. Mace says, South Carolina's families are already stretched thin. I agree, Nancy Mace, just letting you know I agree so far. The last thing they need is a higher electricity bill subsidizing big tech's bottom line. I also agree with that. So far, we're agreeing. We are calling for a 1-year moratorium on new data center construction in South Carolina. I mean, our experts, Astra, Saul, what do we think so far?
So good. So far, so good.
No notes.
After that, the rules are simple. Data centers pay their own way. Florida got it right under Governor DeSantis, requiring data centers to cover the full cost of the power and infrastructure they demand. South Carolina must do the same. South Carolina families and small businesses will not foot the bill for big tech. Not on our watch. I mean, it feels,
feeling good.
Yeah, it feels militant resistance. I mean, what what are the problems with this?
The problem when it's framed with tech companies paying their own way is that it encourages them to build out their own private power plants, which they have the ability to do. For example, I reported from Memphis, which is where Elon Musk has built his 3 Colossus supercomputers in Memphis, Tennessee, and in the surrounding areas. And he has powered them by hooking up these temporary gas turbines. And that's industry standard at this point. And, one of these computers, the first one uses enough power generation that it could power 300,000 homes. Colossus 2, which is now being rented full-time by Anthropic, uses enough power for 2 million homes. And sure, they're not hooked up to the city's power grid, but they are emitting huge amounts of carbon. So it's one of these things that, it's what the right wing does, right? They fill the vacuum when there isn't a sort of clear left, progressive, equitable, sustainable policy vision and propose measures that actually deepen the fundamental crises. So it's dangerous. It's dangerous messaging because you read it and you go right on.
Right. But then, yeah, you're definitely tapping into and creating even,
a big boon to the tech companies and a big boon to the fossil fuel companies, right?
100%.
We're going to be providing energy.
Most urgent problems. Saul, yeah.
And on surface, I mean, this is accurate. And it's worth saying that this tweet from Nancy Mace is a higher quality response to data center build out than most Democratic governors across the country. I mean, there are meaningful things that we can pick at, but saying, hey, like, we're not going to pay for these big companies to do whatever they want is actually a profoundly reasonable thing for her to say. Of course, Nancy Mace has consistently voted against any kind of safeguards against corporate greed, environmental regulations, and all kinds of other safeguards for people who live in South Carolina. So it's a pretty disingenuous thing for her to say, but it still actually puts her ahead of Governor Whitmer in Michigan, of Governor Pritzker in Illinois, in terms of actually raising significant concerns about the state paying for data centers. And also it's worth noting that, to Astra's point, there's nothing here saying what they're actually paying for. Are they paying for the environmental costs if they bring gas plants online in the state of South Carolina to residents in terms of air quality? Are they paying for the cleanup of the area around the data center that gets destroyed in the rapid construction? Are there actually systems in place to make sure that other residents' utility bills don't go up if there's new demand on the grid? There's nothing here. There's absolutely no meat or teeth behind this argument. And so she's just kind of saying, resist, this is bad, while having a tremendously consistent voting record of giving away power to big corporations. But it is really quite sad that it would be a huge win for a Midwest Democratic governor to put out the same tweet.
Ouch.
And I also just want to also add in the obvious thing that even this framing and this shape of this appeal would not be possible. That's a reflection of the fact of all these movements that people have built. They've made it clear people ain't taking, they're not going for the okie doke. So then you at least got to come up with, you got to position it this way. Like, that's a reflection that they're feeling the power and that there is a potential for leverage here.
Absolutely. And in South Carolina in particular, there has been really robust organizing in the environmental justice community. There's been a lot of organizing in Black communities that has forced politicians on both sides of the aisle to reconsider running around and making giveaways to data center and AI companies.
That's right. Even if they still trying to play the 3-card Monte with it, you know what I mean? So one other argument I want to engage before we kind of wrap up is, Astra, you were mentioning that there were some people who have said, by all this robust data center pushback here, these projects are just going to be sort of displaced or reimagined in other parts of the global South or other locations. And so in that regard, you're just kind of like moving the problem or something like that. Could you lay out what you think those people are arguing and what, how you evaluate that argument?
Yeah, this was one of the arguments that Holly Jean Buck made in her Jacobin piece. And she had different critiques of why she thought the data center movement was bad. I mean, one, she didn't like, for example, that it brought people of different ideologies and political persuasions together, right? She was like, well, not everyone's on the same page with the ultimate vision of how society should be. I mean, I think Saul and I would be like, that's great. We want to build coalitions and work with people who don't all, exactly agree with us. She said she wanted democratic governance of AI. I think we believe you have to have disruptive protests to get the other parties to the table. One of her points was that it will increase inequity if you block data centers in the United States, they will be outsourced and built abroad. And that sounds persuasive, but it's actually trickier in real life. I mean, there's reasons that data centers are being sited where they are being sited. That's because they need quality fiber optic cable. They need stable energy sources, though sometimes they are building their own power plants, as we just discussed. They need skilled labor that can build out these warehouses at this rapid speed. And they also want to be geographically, physically close to where the data is going, right? It's faster and more efficient when data centers are nearer to you. That holds true for AI data centers and for good old-fashioned pre-AI, just general internet data centers. So I think this is why people in these communities have actual leverage. Now, if we zoom out, the tech bros are talking about moving data centers, but they're not talking about moving them to poorer countries. They are talking about moving them to space. They're dreaming of suborbital data centers. And in fact, if you look at the deal language that Anthropic made when it rented out Colossus 2, which is that supercomputer outside of Memphis, it says, we're so happy to make this deal with Space XAI, as is now called, right? So they are paying Elon Musk billions and millions of dollars to rent out this computer. They're saying, we are so happy to make this deal to get this compute that we need to build Claude, our chatbot, but we cannot wait to build data centers in space and to fill the night sky with more space junk. So anyway, I think I think the point is, these data centers are a choke point that we have in the here and now. Let's not make the perfect enemy of the good. And real investment should be made in this movement and in seeing what potential can flow from it, because it touches so many things. It touches climate, it touches labor, it touches what it means to be human and to have human relationships. It touches issues of knowledge. It relates to all kinds of things that bring in all sorts of people and can build a kind of populist, anti-billionaire movement, which is exactly what this country needs right now.
Yes. And on that note, I know lots of our unruly subjects want to know how they can plug in. There's lots of folks who are probably already involved in this fight, but there's other people who are like, man, what do I do? How do I plug in? How can I support? So the first thing I just want to say that you should do is go read the article, this Guardian article. And the other thing is to go listen to the Hum podcast, subscribe, leave a review. We wanted to support this because, this data center there's a lot of information about this. There's going to come through really, really good stuff. And then, we also want the Hum to keep going. But what, in terms of, how people can plug in, what do you all want to share with us?
Well, I just want to start by saying that the number of people who I've met who have meaningfully interrupted huge AI companies, who are farmers, who are social workers, who are cosmetologists, who are 20 years old, is unbelievable. And that's just people that I've met. So folks who are listening have maybe met other folks who have been resisting data centers and AI and big tech companies. And so the first thing I would say is that you actually can have a shockingly large impact because of the concentration of power in these choke points and the way that there's actually lessons being learned from all over the US and all over the world about how to fight back against these. And so if you have a data center project being built near you that you're concerned about, or you have a friend who's near one, feel free to reach out to us. We respond to every Instagram message and outreach to the Hum podcast and help people connect to organizers in your state. And so if you want to get involved in this fight, there's very concrete ways to do it. And you don't have to be able to know how to do anything. You don't have to be a career organizer. Most folks who have jumped in know how to cook a meal or know how to tie their shoes. And that's enough to be able to pitch in to meaningfully overcome the power of big tech in this moment.
I love it. Astra?
Just going to echo Saul. He nailed it.
We really want to thank y'all for coming on Unruly Subjects, for all the work you're doing. It's very energizing to have ways forward and to learn about this and to have this sharp analysis. I just feel like I got so much smarter as a result of this, and I really appreciate it. All right, Unruly Subjects. Yes. And now we got a hip hop treat for y'all. You know what I mean? Y'all might remember a couple weeks ago, we did a whole episode about hip hop and politics and organizing, and how hip hop helps us to understand the world, but also how people are organizing with hip hop and doing really powerful things. And I was blessed to have a hip hop artist named RodrigoStarz from a group called Rebel Diaz, which is, one of my favorite groups, on the show. He came on Unruly Subjects and was talking about all those things and how they built culture. And oh man, you definitely want to hear this episode if you haven't heard it. But at the end of that episode, he gave us an exclusive preview. He told us that he's getting ready to, Rebel Diaz is going to come with a new project, and that his son, RoqueStarz, is going to be on the album. And then I got to see his son performed recently at an event. And it was like, oh man, his son really got bars, man. His son is like, I think he's 11 years old, and this was at an event called the People's Forum. So it was a sort of panel about a really important film called California Story. The film is about, gang databases and policing and surveillance and how people are fighting that. So you want to see that. But at the end, RoqueStarz, Rodrigo's son, came up on stage and blessed us with a really powerful song. The first song he performed, you probably heard at the top of the episode, called Take Back the Land. And I want to actually give you some footage. I asked permission if I could give y'all some live footage from the performance so you could just hear how talented RoqueStarz is, and how he's sort of incorporating a song that basically, the song is a real tune, man. Like it makes you move. But like, oh my God, the political analysis and content in it is just wild. So we're gonna go out on that, and much respect to RoqueStarz and also to his father, RodrigoStarz.
Venezuela, take back the land. Nueva York, take back the land. We just rewind as we take back the land. Ey, llegó el inmigrante, siempre pa'lante. Ey, llegó el inmigrante. Siempre pa'lante, somos el pueblo tomando la calle. Ice disappears when it's melted by fire. Son los trabajadores, los criminales son los gobernadores y los senadores y el presidente. Yeah, that's the real Agent Orange. More fire to the streets, el pueblo unido, no justice, no peace. And if you read this song, take back the land. Go take the streets, baby, take back the land. Will the people please put up your hands? Now is the time to take back the land. Valentina, take back the land. South Bronx, take back the land. New York, take back the land. Let's just rewind as we take back the land. Black and brown workers, you got a purpose. We are worth more than just what we gon' purchase. We must unite to defeat this perversive leader of the serpent. Stop with the searches, stop with the raids. Who getting paid? We not gon' let you turn us into slaves. Nah, queremos dignidad. Suelta la tierra, vuélvela ya. And if you hear the song, take back the land. Go take the streets, baby, take back the land. Will the people please put up your hands? Now is the time to take back the land.
Yeah, take back the land. Yeah, take back the land. Yeah, man, big shout out to RoqueStarz, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, really appreciate that. All right, y'all. Unruly Subjects is produced in partnership with Rohome Productions. Boy, I'm proud of Rohome. Alex Lewis is Rohome's creative director. John Myers is Rohome's executive producer. Thanks to Danya Abdelhamid, Nikolai Kovac, and Awan Sao. Shout out to my wife, Sadaka. Shout out to my daughter, Yola. And shout out to my assistant, Carissa. And big respect and shout out to my guests this week, Saul Levin and Astra Taylor. You know what I'm saying? Appreciate y'all coming on and tolerating me while I'm out here doing funny interviews. Speaking of guests, did you hear our episode from last week? How the Informed Consent Coalition is fighting the family policing system in hospitals and beyond, with Desiree Wright and Dr. Arinma Ukoa. I mean, everybody who listened to it is telling me, wow, I did not know this was going on, and I'm so glad to hear how people are fighting it. So you definitely want to check that out. Our theme music was composed by Axel Kakutier. Alex Tatusian made our tile art. Make sure you subscribe to Unruly Subjects wherever you get your podcasts. Unruly Subjects is now on YouTube, y'all. So, you know what I mean? If that's the easier way for you to access it and share it, go check that out at Unruly Subjects. You can follow the show on Instagram at Unruly Subjects Pod, and I put all kind of wild stuff up there too. My personal Instagram is at Chinjirai. And another thing is, we want to know why you listen to Unruly Subjects. For real, right? We want to know more about you, what you think is working, and, you know, kind of person you are, and who you think we should interview, all those things. So we put together a brief survey. The link is in our show notes. It'll take you less than a minute, and we would really appreciate if you fill it out. And we will be back soon. Peace. Rohome Productions. Hey, unruly subjects, it's Chinjirai, and I need your help to keep the show going strong. If you love what we do here, consider supporting us by joining our Patreon community. It's the best way to back the show, and you get some incredible benefits in return. Membership starts at just $5 a month. I mean, there's nothing that cheap, at least in New York. And you immediately get ad-free episodes and exclusive premium episodes. That includes interview outtakes and other extras you ain't gonna hear anywhere else. But that's not all. You can access the Unruly chat and polls. When we have a live event, you're gonna get the pre-sale tickets and the merch. Oh my God, the merch. You know the merch is gonna be fly. And you receive invitations to our Q&A live streams and, my favorite, our annual exclusive hangout with me, the producers, and a special guest. So yo, come on people, join the Unruly mob. Visit patreon.com/unrulysubjects. And thank you for making this show possible.